The morning sun cast long shadows across New Geneva's pristine streets when the first ships appeared. Dr. Sarah was reviewing agricultural reports in her office at the Global Food Security Council when the emergency broadcasts began flooding every screen, every device, every communication channel on Earth. Unknown vessels have entered Earth's atmosphere. This voice trembled with barely controlled fear. Initial count suggests over 300 craft of unknown origin. Sarah rushed to her window, pressing her face against the cool glass. Above the city's skyline, massive triangular ships hung motionless in the sky like dark storm clouds. Each vessel stretched nearly a kilometer in length, their hulls a disturbing shade of deep purple that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns pulsed along their surfaces with an eerie bioluminescent glow. The Global Defense Network had been tracking unusual signals from the outer solar system for weeks, but nothing had prepared humanity for this moment. In observatories around the world, astronomers had detected the fleet's approach just 48 hours earlier. The ships had decelerated from near-light speed with technology that every known law of physics. Captain stood in the command center of the Earth Defense Station, watching helplessly as his tactical displays showed the alien formation. "How did they get past our early warning systems?" he muttered to his communications officer. "Sir, they didn't follow any predictable trajectory. Our sensors show they emerged from what appears to be controlled wormholes, dropping out of faster-than-light travel directly into Earth's orbit." The alien vessels remained silent for exactly 6 hours. During that time, world leaders frantically attempted communication through every method known to science. Radio transmissions, mathematical sequences, visual light patterns, even primitive symbol displays were projected toward the ships. The response was absolute silence. Then, without warning, the aliens spoke. Not through radio waves or traditional electromagnetic communication, but directly into the minds of every human being on Earth simultaneously. The voice was cold, mechanical, devoid of any emotion that humans could recognize. "Inhabitants of the third planet, your species has been evaluated. You possess resources we require. Surrender will result in efficient processing. Resistance will result in termination. You have one rotation of your planet to comply." The message repeated in every language spoken on Earth, suggesting the aliens had been observing humanity for far longer than anyone had imagined. The precision of their linguistic knowledge was terrifying in its implications. President convened an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council within 2 hours. Representatives from every major nation gathered via quantum-encrypted communication links, their faces drawn with the weight of species-level extinction. "What exactly do they mean by processing?" demanded the Chinese representative. "Based on their scans of our planet, we believe they're after our biological diversity," explained Dr. James, Earth's leading. "Our oceans, our forests, our entire ecosystem represents billions of years of evolutionary development. To an advanced civilization, that's incredibly valuable raw material." The Russian representative leaned forward. "And us, what happens to humanity?" Doctor's face darkened. The term processing in biological contexts usually means breaking down organic matter into component parts. They're not interested in us as a species. We're just another resource to be harvested. 24 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Humanity's greatest military minds worked frantically to devise some form of defense, but the aliens' technology was centuries beyond Earth's capabilities. The ships showed no response to electromagnetic pulses. Nuclear radiation had no effect on their hull materials, and their energy signatures suggested power sources that dwarfed anything in human civilization. Dr. Sarah found herself appointed to the Global Crisis Response Team, her expertise in resource distribution suddenly crucial for evacuation planning. She worked 18-hour days, coordinating with transportation networks to move civilian populations away from major cities. But where could 8 billion people hide from ships that could travel faster than light? As the deadline approached, something unexpected happened. The aliens began transmitting detailed scans of Earth's surface directly to human communication networks. The data was horrifyingly precise, showing not just geographical features but real-time biological signatures. They could track every living creature on the planet down to individual organisms. "They're showing us that resistance is futile," Captain realized as he studied the transmissions. They want us to understand exactly how outmatched we are. The final 6 hours became a nightmare of desperate preparation. Military forces worldwide moved into defensive positions, knowing their efforts were likely meaningless, but refusing to surrender without a fight. Civilian populations evacuated to underground shelters that everyone understood would provide only temporary protection. In those last hours, humanity revealed both its greatest weakness and its greatest strength. Mass panic gripped some regions, with riots and looting overwhelming local authorities. But in other areas, people came together with remarkable solidarity. Strangers shared resources, communities organized mutual aid networks, and millions of volunteers worked tirelessly to help evacuate children and elderly populations. Sarah spent the final night in the emergency command center, watching satellite feeds from around the globe. She saw families saying goodbye to each other, knowing they might never meet again. She witnessed acts of incredible courage as first responders continued their duties despite the approaching doom. Most powerfully, she observed the countless small moments of human compassion that seemed to shine brighter in the darkness. When the deadline expired, the alien response was swift and merciless. The attack began at exactly noon Greenwich Mean Time. The alien ships didn't use conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed what human scientists would later term matter disintegration beams. These weapons didn't explode or burn their targets. They simply caused the molecular bonds of any material to cease existing. The first target was New York City. In less than 30 seconds, every building, every vehicle, every living creature in Manhattan simply vanished, leaving behind a perfectly smooth crater where one of humanity's greatest cities had stood. No debris, no rubble, no trace that millions of people had lived and worked there just moments before. London followed, then Tokyo, then Beijing. The aliens systematically targeted every major population center, not to cause maximum casualties, but to demonstrate their absolute technological superiority. They wanted the survivors to understand that continued resistance was not just futile but completely irrational. Dr. Sarah watched the destruction unfold on her screens with growing horror. The clinical precision of the attacks was somehow worse than random violence. These aliens weren't acting out of anger or hatred. They were simply removing obstacles to their resource extraction operations with the same emotional investment a farmer might show while clearing weeds from a field. The global death toll climbed rapidly. 1 million, 10 million, 50 million. The aliens seemed to have calculated exactly how much destruction was necessary to break human resistance while preserving the maximum amount of biological resources for their harvesting operations. But they had made one crucial miscalculation. As the death toll approached 100,000 in the first wave of attacks, something unexpected began happening in the surviving human populations. Instead of breaking their spirit, the overwhelming display of alien cruelty triggered a response that the invaders had not anticipated from their observations of human behavior. Humanity got angry. Not the brief, hot anger of a moment's frustration, but the cold, calculating rage of a species facing extinction. This was the fury that had driven humans to survive ice ages, to cross oceans in primitive boats, to split atoms and reach for the stars despite having evolved on an unremarkable planet orbiting an ordinary star. In military bunkers around the world, the scattered remnants of Earth's governments began receiving reports of something unprecedented. Civilian populations were not surrendering. Instead, they were organizing, mobilizing, and preparing for a fight that every rational calculation said they could not win. Captain, now commanding the last operational defense satellite, received a transmission that would change everything. It came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, a theoretical physicist who had been working on experimental propulsion systems at a secret research facility in the Swiss Alps. Captain, we've been monitoring the alien ship's energy signatures. I think we found something they don't know we've discovered. What is it, Doctor? They're not as invulnerable as they want us to believe. Their matter disintegration weapons require enormous amounts of energy, and they have to lower their defensive shields to fire them. For approximately 0.3 seconds during each attack, their ships become vulnerable to conventional weapons. Felt his heart racing. How conventional are we talking? Nuclear missiles. If we could coordinate a strike during that vulnerability window, we might be able to damage their ships, maybe even destroy one. It wasn't much of a chance. but it was more hope than humanity had possessed since the invasion began. As the alien ships continued their systematic destruction of Earth's major cities, word of Dr. Hawthorne's discovery began spreading through the surviving military networks. The stage was set for humanity's first real counterattack. Sarah, monitoring communications from her position in the Global Crisis Response Center, began receiving reports of something that all logical expectation. Across the devastated planet, humans were not just surviving the alien onslaught. They were adapting to it, learning from it, and preparing to strike back. The aliens had killed 100,000 humans in their opening assault, believing this would demonstrate their overwhelming superiority and force immediate surrender. Instead, they had awakened something in the human species that their advanced civilization had never encountered in their previous conquests. They had awakened humanity's capacity for relentless, unreasoning vengeance. The war for Earth was about to begin in earnest, and the aliens were about to learn why their victims called themselves the most dangerous species in the galaxy. 3 weeks after the initial assault, Earth had become an unrecognizable wasteland. The alien harvesting operations had begun in earnest, with massive extraction ships descending to strip mine entire forests and drain lakes of their biological content. Where once stood the Amazon rainforest, now only bare earth remained, carved into geometric patterns by alien machinery that worked with terrifying efficiency. But in the underground bunkers and hidden facilities scattered across the globe, humanity was preparing for something the aliens had never experienced in their thousands of years of conquest: organized resistance from a supposedly primitive species. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne had become the unofficial coordinator of Earth's scientific resistance network. Working from a reinforced laboratory buried 300 meters beneath the Swiss mountains, she had assembled a team of the world's surviving physicists, engineers, and military strategists. Their mission was simple in concept, but extraordinarily complex in execution: find a way to hurt the aliens. "We've identified 17 separate ship classifications in their fleet," she explained to the assembled team via encrypted quantum communication. "The largest vessels, which we're calling harvesters, are the ones doing the resource extraction. They're heavily shielded but move slowly and predictably." Colonel James Harrison, formerly of the United States Space Command, studied the tactical displays with professional interest. His base in Colorado had survived the initial assault purely by chance. Hidden deep within Cheyenne Mountain and powered by experimental fusion reactors that didn't emit the energy signatures the aliens seemed to be targeting. "What about their escort vessels?" he asked. "We're calling them destroyers. Smaller, faster, heavily armed. They patrol in groups of 3 to 5 ships, providing protection for the harvesters. These are the ships that conducted the initial city attacks." Dr. Hawthorne manipulated the holographic display, highlighting the different alien vessel types. "But here's what we've learned from observing their operations. The destroyers have a fatal flaw in their defensive systems." She paused the display on a recorded image of an alien destroyer firing its matter disintegration weapon. "When they charge their primary weapons, they have to route power from their shield generators. For exactly 0.31 seconds, their protective barriers drop to 23% effectiveness." "That's not much of a window," observed General Maria Santos from her position in the Amazon bunker complex that had become South America's resistance headquarters. "No, but it's enough," Dr. Hawthorne replied with grim satisfaction. "We've been working on a modified nuclear delivery system, enhanced fusion warheads with improved targeting computers that can react faster than human reflexes." The plan that emerged from weeks of desperate collaboration was audacious in its simplicity. Using the last remaining military satellites and ground-based installations, the resistance would coordinate a simultaneous strike against multiple alien destroyers during their vulnerability windows. The goal wasn't to win the war with a single battle, but to prove that humanity could hurt the invaders. Captain had volunteered to lead the first strike mission personally. His defense station had been retrofitted with one of Dr. Hawthorne's experimental weapon systems, a modified intercontinental ballistic missile equipped with enhanced fusion warheads, and an AI targeting system sophisticated enough to exploit the aliens' momentary vulnerability. Sarah had been working tirelessly to coordinate survivor networks across the globe. Her agricultural expertise had proven invaluable in helping scattered human populations find food and shelter in the devastated landscape. But more importantly, she had become the primary communication coordinator for the resistance, maintaining contact between isolated groups and ensuring that intelligence about alien operations reached the people who needed it most. On the day of the first strike, she monitored global communications from the Swiss facility, her heart pounding as reports came in from around the world. Every surviving military installation was preparing to fire simultaneously, creating the largest coordinated attack in human history against an enemy that had seemed invincible just weeks earlier. Alien destroyer formation approaching the ruins of Berlin, came the report from the European resistance cell. 3 ships maintaining standard patrol pattern. Confirmed target acquisition over what used to be Mumbai, reported the Asian Command Center. 5 ships in harvesting support formation. Similar reports flooded in from every continent. The aliens had become complacent in their operations, following predictable patterns as they systematically stripped Earth of its biological resources. They had never encountered significant resistance in their previous conquests, and their tactics reflected this assumption of complete technological superiority. "All stations, this is Hawthorne Command," Dr. Elizabeth's voice carried across the quantum communication network. "Targeting computers are locked on primary targets. Remember, we get one shot at this. If we miss the vulnerability window, we won't get another chance." Captain felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool, recycled air in his command center. His target was a lone destroyer that had been conducting systematic sweeps of the North American Great Lakes region, vaporizing any signs of human activity it detected. The ship had destroyed what remained of Chicago 3 days earlier, erasing the last traces of one of America's greatest cities. "Target is beginning its attack run on Detroit," reported, watching his tactical display as the alien ship positioned itself over the ruins of the former automotive capital. "Weapon systems are charging. Energy buildup detected." Around the world, similar scenes played out as human operators tracked their targets with desperate precision. The resistance had identified dozens of vulnerable targets, but they would only get one opportunity to prove that humanity could fight back against seemingly impossible odds. "Target shields dropping to minimum," announced, his voice steady despite the enormous tension. "Firing in 3, 2, 1, missile away." The modified ICBM streaked through the upper atmosphere at hypersonic speed, its enhanced guidance system making minute corrections as it approached the alien destroyer. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the ship might detect the incoming threat and raise its shields in time. But the alien crew was focused on their ground bombardment, confident that no human weapon could threaten their vessel. The nuclear warhead detonated just as the alien ship's shields reached their minimum effectiveness. The explosion was visible from orbit, a brilliant flash of nuclear fire that engulfed the kilometer-long vessel in temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then pieces of alien hull material began falling toward Earth like burning meteorites, and realized with stunned amazement that they had actually destroyed an enemy ship. "Confirmed kill," he shouted into his communication system. "Target destroyed, repeat, target destroyed." Similar reports began flooding in from around the globe. Not every strike had been successful, but out of 47 attempted attacks, 19 alien ships had been destroyed or severely damaged. For the first time since the invasion began, human weapons had proven capable of hurting the seemingly invincible enemy. The alien response was swift and devastating. Within hours of the coordinated strikes, every identified human military installation came under concentrated assault. The aliens deployed new weapon systems that the resistance had never seen before, devices that could track energy emissions through hundreds of meters of solid rock and precisely target the sources. But something unexpected happened during these retaliatory strikes. Instead of breaking human resistance, the alien escalation had the opposite effect. Word of the successful attacks spread through survivor networks faster than any official communication could have carried it. Across the devastated planet, human populations received the most important message they had heard since the invasion began. The aliens could be hurt. Dr. Sarah found herself coordinating a completely different type of resistance network. Instead of simply helping people find food and shelter, she was now organizing sabotage operations. coordinating intelligence gathering, and helping scattered groups of survivors plan their own attacks against alien installations. We're receiving reports of spontaneous uprisings in over 200 locations, she reported to Dr. Hawthorne during their daily briefing. Civilian groups are attacking alien ground installations with improvised weapons. Most of these attacks are unsuccessful, but they're forcing the aliens to divert resources to guard duty. The aliens had expected their superior technology to make resistance impossible. They had conquered dozens of civilizations throughout the galaxy, and in every previous case, a demonstration of overwhelming force had led to immediate surrender. But humanity was responding in ways that their previous experience had not prepared them for. Instead of surrendering when faced with impossible odds, humans became more creative, more vicious, and more determined. Groups of survivors began developing asymmetrical warfare tactics that exploited the aliens' assumptions about primitive behavior. They targeted isolated harvesting operations, disrupted supply lines, and most importantly, they began capturing alien technology for study. Dr. Hawthorne's team made their second major breakthrough when analyzing debris from the destroyed alien ships. The aliens' matter disintegration weapons operated on principles that human science could not fully understand, but their power systems and shield generators used recognizable physical laws. Their energy generation is based on controlled fusion reactions, but with efficiency rates that are impossible according to our current understanding of physics, she explained to the global resistance leadership. However, their shield systems require constant to maintain effectiveness, if we can find a way to disrupt those calibration sequences. The work was painstakingly slow and enormously dangerous. Every piece of alien technology had to be studied while under the constant threat of discovery and retaliation. But gradually, human scientists began understanding their enemies' capabilities and, more importantly, their limitations. 3 months after the first successful strikes, the resistance had evolved from a desperate last stand into something resembling an organized military force. Hidden bases coordinated operations across multiple continents. Survivor networks shared intelligence about alien movements, and human engineers had begun developing weapons specifically designed to exploit alien vulnerabilities. Captain, now promoted to overall military coordinator for the North American resistance, stood in a converted subway tunnel beneath the ruins of New York, studying holographic displays that showed the current tactical situation. The chamber was lit by fusion-powered generators salvaged from destroyed human installations and reinforced with composite armor plating that could withstand direct hits from most alien weapons. Our intelligence networks have identified a major alien operation beginning tomorrow, he announced to his assembled staff. They're planning to harvest the entire Pacific Ocean, starting with a simultaneous operation involving over 50 harvester ships. The implications were staggering. The Pacific contained nearly half of Earth's remaining biological diversity. If the aliens succeeded in stripping it clean, they would have achieved their primary objective, and humanity would be left with a dead planet even if they somehow managed to drive off the invasion force. "Do we have enough firepower to disrupt an operation of that scale?" asked Doctor, who had become the Resistance's primary strategic coordinator. Looked grim, not with conventional attacks, but Dr. Hawthorne's team has developed something new, something that might give us a real chance to hurt them badly. The plan they had developed was audacious beyond anything attempted since the invasion began. Instead of targeting individual ships, they would attempt to disrupt the aliens' entire operational network by attacking their command and control systems. Dr. Hawthorne had discovered that the alien fleet relied on quantum communication networks that, while incredibly sophisticated, could be disrupted if attacked with precisely the right frequency patterns. "We're talking about a coordinated electromagnetic pulse attack using every remaining nuclear weapon on Earth," explained. "If we can synchronize the detonations correctly, we might be able to create a resonance cascade that will overload their communication systems." It was an enormous gamble. Success would temporarily blind the alien fleet and give the Resistance a window of opportunity to strike at their most valuable targets. Failure would exhaust humanity's remaining nuclear arsenal and leave them defenseless against inevitable retaliation. But as reports came in of the aliens' accelerating resource extraction operations, it became clear that Earth was running out of time. The planet's ecosystems were collapsing faster than anyone had anticipated, and within months, there would be nothing left to save even if the aliens could somehow be driven away. Sarah spent the final night before the operation coordinating with resistance cells around the world, ensuring that every surviving group understood their role in what might be humanity's last desperate gamble. As she worked, she reflected on how much had changed since that first day when alien ships had appeared in Earth's skies. The species that had once debated the ethics of genetic engineering and environmental protection was now planning the systematic destruction of an advanced alien civilization. Humanity had discovered capabilities for violence and vengeance that even their own military leaders had not suspected they possessed. The aliens had killed 100,000 humans in their initial assault, believing this would demonstrate their overwhelming superiority and force immediate surrender. Instead, they had awakened something in the human species that their advanced civilization had never encountered in their previous conquests: the capacity for relentless, escalating retaliation that refused to acknowledge the rationality of surrender. Tomorrow's operation would determine whether humanity's growing rage could be transformed into effective resistance, or whether the last remnants of Earth's defenders would burn themselves out in one final, futile gesture of defiance. 6 months had passed since the Great Pulse, as historians would later call humanity's desperate electromagnetic attack on the alien communication network. The operation had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations, not only disrupting alien coordination, but revealing something that changed the entire nature of the conflict. The invaders were not the overwhelming force they had appeared to be. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne stood in what had once been the Pentagon's Situation Room, now relocated to a massive underground complex beneath the Appalachian Mountains. The walls displayed tactical information that would have seemed like science fiction just a year ago: real-time tracking of alien ship movements, detailed analysis of their technology, and most remarkably, strategic assessments of their weaknesses. The intelligence we've gathered from captured alien personnel has completely altered our understanding of the situation, she explained to the assembled leadership of what had become known as the Terran Defense Coalition. The force that invaded Earth represents only a fraction of their total military capability, but they're not part of some vast galactic empire. They're refugees. Captain, now bearing the rank of general in the reformed human military structure, studied the holographic displays with professional interest. The past months had transformed him from a defensive coordinator into something approaching a strategic genius, his tactical innovations having saved countless human lives and destroyed dozens of alien vessels. "Refugees from what?" he asked. Dr. Hawthorne manipulated the display to show a star map of the local galactic region. Their home system was destroyed by something they call the Devourers approximately 200 years ago. The ships that attacked Earth represent the last survivors of their species, searching for a new world to colonize. The implications were staggering. For months, humanity had assumed they were fighting against the advance forces of a technologically superior civilization with unlimited resources. The discovery that their enemies were actually desperate survivors of a destroyed world cast the entire conflict in a different light. Sarah, now serving as Earth's first director of affairs, had spent weeks interrogating captured alien prisoners. The process had been difficult and often disturbing, as the alien psychology proved to be fundamentally different from human thinking patterns. But gradually, a picture had emerged of a species driven to desperation by circumstances beyond their control. Their name for themselves translates roughly as the Eternal Seekers, she reported. They've been searching for a suitable world for over 2 centuries. Earth is the first planet they've discovered that meets their biological requirements for long-term survival. So they decided to exterminate us and take our world, General observed grimly. It's more complex than that, Sarah continued. Their society doesn't have concepts equivalent to our ideas of mercy or coexistence. When they encounter another species occupying a world they need, their standard procedure is what they call ecological optimization. They process the existing life forms into raw materials and reshape the environment to suit their own needs. Dr. Hawthorne brought up another display showing detailed scans of alien biological systems. Here's what makes this situation particularly dangerous for us. Their species evolved in a high-radiation environment with extreme temperature variations. They're naturally adapted to survive in conditions that would kill humans instantly, which means they view our environmental requirements as quaint limitations rather than serious constraints. The information painted a picture of an enemy that was both more understandable and more terrifying than humanity had initially realized. The aliens weren't monsters driven by hatred or malice. They were simply following their species' established procedures for survival, which happened to require the complete elimination of human civilization. But the Great Pulse had revealed something else about their enemies. They were not invincible. The electromagnetic attack had not only disrupted their communications, but had also damaged critical systems throughout their fleet. More importantly, it had forced them to reveal the location of their command ship, a massive vessel that had remained hidden in Earth's outer solar system since the invasion began. "We've designated it as the primary command vessel," General explained, indicating a massive object on the tactical display. "It's approximately 5 kilometers in length and appears to house the majority of their remaining population. Our intelligence suggests that destroying this ship would effectively end their ability to continue the invasion." The plan that had emerged from months of careful preparation was ambitious beyond anything attempted in human history. Instead of continuing to fight a defensive war against an enemy with superior technology, humanity would launch an offensive strike designed to eliminate the alien threat permanently. Dr. Hawthorne's team had been working frantically to develop the weapons systems necessary for such an operation. Using technology reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment, they had constructed what they called the Vengeance Array, a series of massive installations capable of accelerating nuclear warheads to nearly 20% of light speed. "The theoretical calculations show that our enhanced fusion weapons should be capable of penetrating their ship's defensive systems," she explained. "But we only get one opportunity. If we miss, they'll relocate to a position beyond our range and resume their harvesting operations." The human resistance had evolved dramatically during the months of warfare. What had begun as scattered groups of survivors hiding in underground shelters had become a coordinated military organization with manufacturing capabilities, intelligence networks, and strategic planning that rivaled the complexity of any nation-state in human history. Sarah had been instrumental in this transformation, using her expertise in resource coordination to help establish supply lines between isolated human settlements. But more importantly, she had become humanity's primary expert on alien psychology, a field that had proven crucial to understanding their enemies' decision-making processes. "The captured aliens show clear signs of what we would recognize as desperation," she reported during the final strategic briefing. "They're not just fighting to conquer Earth, they're fighting to avoid extinction. That makes them incredibly dangerous because they have nothing to lose by escalating the conflict to any level necessary." This psychological profile had proven accurate in recent weeks, as the aliens had begun deploying increasingly destructive weapons against human population centers. They were no longer concerned with preserving Earth's biological resources for harvesting. They simply wanted to eliminate human resistance as quickly and efficiently as possible. But humanity had been adapting as well, developing new tactics and technologies with a speed that surprised even their own scientists and military leaders. The pressure of existential threat had unleashed human creativity and innovation at levels never before seen in the species' history. General reviewed the final attack plan one more time, studying each component of the operation that would determine humanity's fate. The Vengeance Array installations had been constructed in secret at 12 locations around the globe, each one hidden deep underground and powered by fusion reactors that could generate enough energy to accelerate their projectiles to relativistic speeds. "The attack will require precise coordination," he explained to his assembled staff. "We need to overwhelm their defensive systems with multiple simultaneous impacts. If even one installation fails to fire on schedule, the entire operation could fail." The target was not just the aliens' command ship, but their entire remaining fleet. Intelligence gathered from captured personnel had revealed that the invaders' fleet represented the last survivors of their species. There were no reinforcements coming from distant star systems, no backup fleets waiting to avenge their deaths. This was their final, desperate attempt to establish a new home world. Dr. Hawthorne made her final preparations in the primary control center, buried beneath the Rocky Mountains. The Vengeance Array represented the pinnacle of human engineering achievement, combining advanced materials science, exotic energy sources, and targeting computers sophisticated enough to track objects moving at significant fractions of light speed. "All installations report ready status," she announced as the countdown reached its final phase. "Targeting computers have locked onto all primary objectives. We are go for Operation Retribution." The names they had chosen for their weapons and operations reflected humanity's psychological state after months of devastating warfare. This was no longer a fight for survival or self-defense. It had become a mission of vengeance against an enemy that had killed millions of humans and destroyed Earth's greatest cities. Sarah monitored global communications as reports came in from resistance cells around the world. The surviving human population had been evacuated to the deepest and most secure shelters available, but everyone understood that this operation represented their species' final gamble. If the Vengeance Array failed to destroy the alien fleet, humanity would lack the resources to mount another offensive operation. 30 seconds to firing sequence, Dr. Hawthorne announced. Around the globe, the massive installations began their final charging sequences. Each weapon required enormous amounts of energy to accelerate its projectiles to the velocities necessary to penetrate alien defenses. The power demands were so extreme that they had temporarily darkened entire continents, as the fusion reactors diverted every available watt to the acceleration systems. 10 seconds, all stations report optimal firing solutions. General watched the tactical displays with calm professionalism, but his thoughts were on the 100,000 humans who had died in the aliens' initial assault. Those deaths had been the beginning of humanity's transformation from a peaceful, exploratory species into something harder and more dangerous than they had ever been before. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire all batteries. The Vengeance Array fired simultaneously from 12 locations around Earth. The relativistic projectiles streaked through space faster than any human-made objects in history. Their enhanced fusion warheads, capable of generating explosions equivalent to the total energy output of entire star systems for brief instants. The alien command ship had less than 30 seconds to detect the incoming threat and respond. Their defensive systems, sophisticated enough to deflect conventional weapons, were not designed to handle projectiles moving at 20% of light speed. The enhanced fusion warheads detonated with precisely calculated timing, creating a cascade of nuclear fire that engulfed the massive vessel in temperatures and pressures that briefly matched the interior of a star. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface despite occurring in the outer solar system, a brief new star that burned for several minutes before fading back to darkness. When the light dimmed, long-range sensors confirmed what every human had desperately hoped to see. The alien command ship and most of their remaining fleet had been completely destroyed. But the victory came with a terrible cost. In the final moments before their destruction, the aliens had transmitted one last message to Earth, not through their previous telepathic method, but through conventional radio broadcasts that every surviving human could receive. The message was simple and chilling. The devourers will come. What we could not prevent, you cannot survive. As humanity celebrated their victory over the invasion force, and physicists began analyzing the aliens' final warning, deep space monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures from the direction the alien fleet had originally approached, suggesting that something vast and hostile was indeed moving through interstellar space toward Earth. Dr. Sarah found herself appointed to head the newly formed Department of Galactic Threats, tasked with preparing humanity for whatever cosmic horror had originally driven the aliens from their home world. The species that had learned to fight with desperate creativity against one existential threat would now have to prepare for something even more dangerous. Generals stood in the ruins of what had once been New York City, now marked only by a perfectly smooth crater where millions of people had once lived and worked. The memorial they were planning would honor not just the 100,000 who died in the initial assault, but all of humanity's losses during the months of warfare that followed. But more than a memorial, it would serve as a reminder of what humanity had become during their darkest hour. The species that had once debated the ethics of genetic engineering and environmental protection had proven capable of systematically hunting down and destroying an entire alien civilization. They had transformed from victims into something their enemies had never encountered before. relentless predators who would pursue vengeance across star systems if necessary. The aliens had killed 100,000 humans in their initial assault, believing this would demonstrate their overwhelming superiority and force immediate surrender. Instead, they had awakened something in the human species that had ultimately led to their complete extinction. They had discovered too late that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their intelligence, but their absolute refusal to accept defeat even when facing impossible odds. As Earth began the long process of rebuilding, humanity prepared for whatever cosmic threats awaited them among the stars. The Devourers were coming, but they would find a species that had learned to fight with the desperate creativity of survivors and the relentless determination of predators. The galaxy was about to discover why the most dangerous species in the universe called themselves human.